Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I hope everyone is doing well. So recently I've been thinking through how these high yield ETFs will survive in the coming years. I'm thinking there's another element that I haven't really thought through yet, and that's like a generational game theory. So let me explain what I mean. So right now there's an assumption that us boomers as a generation, they maintain like the lion's share of like the stocks and investments. And then the second part is like how quickly could like boomers start dumping their investments. I've kind of covered this before. There was a interview with Mike Green from Simplify ETFs that he's starting to already see like the rate of ETFs starting to kind of go into decline. So right now it's not that worrying yet, but as more and more baby boomers decide to retire, at some point they're gonna have to monetize some of their stock in ETF holdings. So I'm kind of wondering like how that would affect like high yield ETFs. And I also wanted to thank this kind viewer, Meteor Fury, so that's a cool name, for hoping to to support the channel. So thank you very much. So kind of there was a an article that I read that was a little bit alarming. According to Rosenberg Research, Americans over 55 account for 80% of equity ownership, and I thought, wow, that's pretty high. So I'll link that along with other articles in the description below, so you can read at your own pace. And then there was another thing that I saw that 53%. Well, I mean, boomers control like 53% of like the share of wealth in this country. So if you add up like the baby boomers and the silent generation, that's about 64% share of wealth. So I'm assuming the difference between like the equity investments and the overall share of wealth, maybe because as millennials and Zoomers start to enter like the housing market, hopefully they'll be able to afford something, and maybe that accounts for like the discrepancy between 64 and 80%, because like part of the wealth is also in real estate and maybe rental properties. So but even still, like even if you just look at the lower end of the range, like 53% of wealth, yeah, that's a big percentage. And I'm wondering, at some point they're gonna have to liquidate some of this, or maybe they'll maybe move to like a lower maybe like a location with a lower cost of living. So I think that's something we have to kind of keep in like the back of our minds, if we want to decide to hold on to these high yield ETFs for the long term. So one scenario that I thought through was, well, since boomers controls such a large amount of wealth, either through stocks or ETFs, how will they liquidate? Because at this point, if this research is accurate, millennials and Zoomers, they won't be able to absorb that much selling pressure. So I'm thinking it'll probably in the beginning, it might be older boomers selling to younger boomers in terms of if there is liquidation. And there's also like personal things that go on in terms of like financial decision making. For example, like maybe let's say like for example you're a boomer and maybe you don't have like a heir in your will set up yet, because maybe you have like a some rotten kids, they never call, they don't visit, etc. Or maybe they're just ungrateful in general. Then the heck with it, you say you could probably just buy a whole bunch of high yield ETFs, and you won't care about any type of ETF erosion. And in that case, you're probably in runoff mode, and you probably just want to enjoy your retirement, just enjoy the distributions, and don't have to worry about anything. And if that's the case, then that would imply that going forward there could be like choppy rotational for markets. But of course, like this is just like a very extreme example. Another scenario to think of: will there be like a flight to safety? So as much as I appreciate some of the strategies that YieldMax and Defiance are, creating for like the general public, I don't think anyone like everyone is gonna like these type of products just because like maybe they don't understand them quite yet, and so far they're still on the smaller side. I'm hoping that they'll find ways to improve or maybe like expand like the reach. So for example, like the Spy Tea, I think that's a very interesting product, but I don't know how well that will scale. And if that's the case, I think like boomers will probably flock to like larger ETF families. For example, like BlackRock. In the recent earnings report, they have about 10 trillions in assets under management. So that's definitely nothing to sneeze at. But then there's also like a kind of like a potential happy side to this too. Let's say you have your boomer, maybe your kids, uh, they're either millennials or zoomers, or what have you. Maybe you do have like a loving family relationship. Maybe they do call to check up on you every so often. Maybe they help shovel your sidewalks, etc. So if that's the case, then you're probably gonna want to take care of like the next generation. So there'll probably be like an orderly transfer of assets, meaning like you'll probably be more conservative in terms of like drawing down your portfolio, and there's probably no need to FOMO. And if that's the case, that's probably like the best case scenario in that you're probably still gonna like spread out your purchases, like maybe during pullbacks or corrections, and then that'll give like time for millennials and Gen Xers and Zoomers to kind of like catch up on their portfolios. And if that's the case, like that'll be great. But my guess is that like you know these are just scenarios. I guess in real life, it'll probably be somewhere in the middle. Like not everybody has like like a crazy family, and not everyone has like the perfect ideal family either. And then there's also like a very ugly scenario in that like boomers, depending on how badly they need the money. Like for example, if there's like a market crash, there could be like an ugly scenario where boomers are kind of like forced to liquidate like their assets. Hopefully they're not leveraged, but let's just say like there's a really bad bear market, something like the I guess like the 2008 2009 crisis comes to mind. If that's the case, there could be a lot of like ugly price action, and I don't know if by then if millennials and Zoomers will have enough like cash on the sidelines to kind of buy up all this additional liquidations. So you might have like this weird dynamic where you might have like both intragenerational and intergenerational, like boomer versus boomer, and then like boomer versus zoomer scenarios. So this is a ugly like demographic PvP, like so player versus player. So this is something that I'm trying to figure out if there's a good, like a way to measure this, because I'm really afraid of like waterfall declines, and that there won't be like enough buying pressure from either the younger generations, like the millennials and the Zoomers, and maybe if like Gen X and millennials and Zoomers all at the same time, I don't know if that's even enough to kind of like offset all the selling pressure. So if that's the case, boomers might have an advantage, definitely with experience because they've seen bear markets before, and they've so far they've been able to kind of power through all this, and they definitely have like the size advantage in terms of like wealth, so they can easily smack around disrespectful whippersnappers if they wanted to. So it really depends on how you know I guess like boomers are feeling, because since all that wealth is tied up within this generation, I'm hoping for the best where it'll be like an orderly liquidation over time. And then also for boomers, I think especially if you're maybe in your mid 60s, you probably still have like a decent part of your retirement that comes from Social Security, so that helps like maybe offset some of the selling pressure, because you won't have to liquidate your stocks or bonds. And then there's still like a advantage for Zoomers. So generally speaking, you're very smart in terms of technology. So for example, I see a lot of like free Python scripts in terms of like for trading and investing as well. So I think like in terms of that, you're generally very smart that way. And then there's also like a speed factor too. But one of the things I'm concerned about is that there's a lot of like narrative manipulation through social media. So I think Zoomers might screw over other Zoomers either through misleading or exaggerated wealth claims and through just like kind of like some of the silly stuff like memes. So I'm hoping that that's not the case because there's an interesting graphic here from I'm probably butchering the name, but it's like Kobisi letter. It's pretty popular on Twitter in regards of like narrative manipulation. So like in terms of like the top 1% of wealth, in order to meet that goal, you need like at the time of this recording, it's like 5.8 million, so close to 6 million. So sometimes when you see a lot of these exaggerated either videos or posts on like social media, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt, especially if they look like they're in the 20s and they're probably just like flexing, either because like they're a trust fund baby or they're just like lying just to like create engagement. So just be careful out there in general. And I don't want this to be like too doomer or too dank. I kind of also want to give like the let's say like for example you're starting out and you feel like like a broke Zoomer, and I just want to give a pep talk because I kind of know what it's like when you're first starting out and you're having a lot of like financial difficulties. It's very similar to being like a kid of like from of poor immigrants. The good thing is like you still have time on your side, so even if you mess up, let's say you bought like too much or allocated too much to some of these high yield ETFs and they're not quite working out, well that's okay. Like even if you get rid of them and like you start over with like other products, you still have like a lot of time to compound, and then also like you also have like you start building up experience, and then like you'll have like hunger with you, and that's still a very powerful motivator. And then I see a lot of very like angry and rightfully so. Sometimes like the younger generations, you're not given enough credit, and I don't want like this seething rage to kind of like fester. I think it's good that if you can like channel that rage in a more productive way, and that'll help you power through like the tough challenges. So for example, maybe like if you feel like you got screwed over by the system or maybe by like bad ETFs, well now you can take the time to learn like how to like learn finance like the proper way. Maybe you want to consider like just like going back to school, or maybe you want to study for like the C of A examination and learn proper investing and trading techniques. uh, I think that would be like helpful. And then also like sometimes like when you're angry all the time, you have to kind of like take a step back. You want to mellow out and do some nice things for yourself, because I don't think it's healthy to have all this like bottled anger. But anyway, so I think this is just like one additional challenge that we might see in the future. So I want people to kind of like be prepared for it and like maybe find like some ways to kind of like hedge your portfolios, either through like some of the short ETFs or some of like the inverse ETFs that might be coming out later. Or you can just like use like stop losses. Like so, for example, if you have a holding that goes below like a certain point, maybe you can kind of consider like stopping out and just like redeploying your capital in a better performing ETF. So if you like this type of content, please consider giving this a like. All subscriptions are welcome. And thank you for the people that have given super thanks so far. They're greatly appreciated. So thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.